I always say, like, if you got enough, if we went to a mechanics convention, we'd be like, them goddamn mufflers.
Yeah, fucking Ford, you know?
Right, yeah, exactly. But I still feel like it's all I talk about with people, and it makes me feel like I'm a very self-obsessed asshole.
No, I mean, it's just like jobs. You don't get to talk about it when you're working on it.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
I was thinking about what I wanted to talk to you about as I was coming over here, and I was just sort of trying to think about, like, what we have in common.
Handsome, white
Handsome.
dudes. Yeah.
Yeah.
White Handsome is a great name for an image book.
But I was thinking about it as I was coming over here, and I was like, I don't know, we don't know each other that well, but I honestly think, like, it's always been like I wanted to know you better, because it's like there's very few people who do this job that know what it's like to do everything.
Yeah, but I won't let you in. That's the thing. You want to know me better, but I won't let you in.
But you're Canadian.
Yeah.
So, so it's all about, like, pretending to let somebody in.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, that's true. Like, you and I, we both fucking do everything on a book.
And started to sort of do it at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of like, people knowing about it, I guess.
Yeah. When was the first comic you made, like, on your own? Like you were selling at shows or whatever, like.
I did comic strips.
Yeah.
Like back when I was like in college, I would just go to the comic convention and like take my portfolio around to every person at the con.
Yeah.
And say like, what do you think of my work?
Yeah.
And that was art school. Because I never went to art school, I didn't know that I really could
go
to art school.
Yeah, I can tell.
you shouldn't have cracked. You do that again.
No, I got to crack so you know I'm not serious.
Right. Yeah, but I didn't go to art school. I didn't know that I could go to art school.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Education stuff with comics is interesting. Like when I started the studio in Toronto, it was myself, Cameron Stewart, Kagan McLeod, and Ben Shannon. And Cameron was the only one of us that just did not go to art school. We were just like, but you're so fucking good at this. And he just was like, well, yeah. Like when he decided he wanted to be a comic artist, what he did was he just learned how to do the basic stuff. Get a book on perspective, all right. Get a book on like life drawing and anatomy, and you know he worked with Darwin Cook, and like Darwin obviously knew a thing or two about comics, so he learned a lot. Just the process of like running stuff by him, like yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking about. Was like, so I grew up with. I was lucky that like even though I didn't have a formal art education, I had a good comic shop.
Yeah.
And so when I ran into Alex at the comics retailer thing, we were talking about how like he said people always say to them like, you guys are so lucky to have so many comic book creators in Toronto.
Yeah.
And he was like, maybe it's also the other way around, like maybe having a good shop.
Yeah.
Or good shops.
Yeah.
Like it helps encourage people that this is possible.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
But I don't know your secret. I don't know your origin story.
Origin story. God, I don't know. Origin story. Like, I was a puny kid. I was the smallest kid in my class, no matter what year. So I just had to joke and be the class clown to get people to not beat me up and to like me. I think the first comic I did was in kindergarten. I was after seeing Empire Strikes Back, and I just did like a storybook of Empire Strikes Back, basically, change a few things. Mm-hmm. And I think the bug was planted that like this could be something at that age, because the teacher took it and she was like, this is great. And she laminated it and put it on display. And lamination is the sign of great work.
Right.
Like in public,
it will last forever.
Yeah, in public school, it's like, oh my God, like the first time you hold a thing you did and it's laminated, it's like, well, this is a museum. Right. I'm in a museum now. And I remember just like seeing it like in the display case laminated. I was like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
And by like grade 4, I was like kind of like the class artist, and the school wanted to do murals in the gym. Mm-hmm. And so they got me in like grade 4 or 5 to be the one to draw them. And there were two things I picked up from that. Like one, I just drew these fun characters doing sports and like wacky things and stuff. And but they made the grade 8 students actually do the painting. Because they projected onto the wall, and the grade 8 students had to trace my like grade 5 whatever.
So you were drunk with power.
I was drunk with power. So I learned a thing about capitalism, like do this and let others do the actual work.
Right.
But also it was just the glory of it. Like every time we'd have like gym class, I was surrounded by my drawings, and like everyone in the school knew who I was at that point. And I was like, oh yeah, this is something. It's weird because like the origin story should be like, oh, I created a thing and I loved it, and like it stoked my heart. But for me, it was like, I could totally get some fucking like girls, and like the guys aren't gonna beat me up and stuff. Like, yeah.
That is weirdly, aside from being a sex pervert, that is just weirdly close to my origin.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I passed 4th grade because the teacher let me make comics.
Oh.
I was like sick every day. Like I would get up and be like, my stomach hurts. I just don't want to deal with these people.
Yeah.
And I was like, legitimately sick at the beginning.
Yeah, but then...
And then started milking it. And I missed so many days of school. So I guess my mom and the teacher were like, make some comic books. And I made this big mural.
Okay, yeah.
Like in class of like basically like my own image comics.
That's great.
Right, this is pre-image though, right? But like I did all these like drawings of like my version of Iron Man and my version of Captain America or whatever. And like the whole class like would come over and act like like it was a special thing I was doing.
Yeah. I had this thing where it was like grade 8, 7 or 8. I moved to a new school, and I went from a small town to a slightly bigger town, and I was a mess. Like I spent every lunch hour in the bathroom crying. Like I just couldn't face this life in a new town. And also I just did bad in class. Well, it wasn't that I was failing everything. It was I wasn't handing in projects. I wasn't doing work. Okay. But then when I would do the test, I'd get like perfect on the test. Like I knew the stuff, but I just wasn't actually.
This is my life.
And I think it's a lot of creative people's lives. It's not living up to potential. Like that's kind of the thing. And so at one point there was another kid in class that was the same, and they had this like grand idea to remove both of us from the class and put us in a small room with a couple of computers. And they were like, "This is your room now, and you can do whatever you want. Like we'll give you the outline of what you need to learn, and then you come up with the projects." And then you do the projects. And so immediately we installed a little Nerf basketball net, and we just played, basketball. And I learned to hack into the computer and like change report cards. Like it was great.
Is that guy an assassin now?
Yeah. I should find out what he does now. But what happened was like, so I'm like, well, I'm gonna make a comic. This is great. I'm gonna make a comic. And it was like, I forget what the subject matter was, but it involved the poor treatment of First Nations in Canada and the history of it. So I started working on a comic, and I got like 2 pages in. At the time, I'm like, oh, this is great. It's so dramatic. My grade 7 mind, just like, but that's as far as it got. So anyone that saw this comic was just like, this is what this kid learned in 6 months. So needless to say, their project was a failure of having the 2 of us in a room. Like we're gonna all of a sudden create great stuff.
I like that. Like they like have you hooked up to like an EKG and like read it. It's like Stranger Things or something.
Yeah, it was like watching us through a one-way mirror. No, it was bad. Yeah, and like I found that like in high school, like every once in a while I kind of do my own comics, so you only get like 2 or 3 pages in. And then still at the time, like art was kind of my way to like, win popularity or like not get beat up by the football team. Whenever I would get into a fight, I would black out in rage, and I would wake up usually standing over a kid, and I'm covered in the kid's blood. Like it was bad. Like it was the kind of thing like.
So you're a Bruce Banner.
I had like the Wolverine Berserker rage kind of thing that would happen because you can only kind of push me too far, and then I would lose it. And that's saved me a few times because like I think everyone kind of realized like, okay, well, first of all, he's a funny guy. Let's not beat him up, and if you are going to beat him up, he's probably going to beat you up in a weird twist.
Yeah.
But it's terrible. Like I remember one time I was in like the principal's office, and there was like this big kid there. It was me there. and we were both like covered in mud because we just like it was like Dark Knight, mud pit. I'm the surgeon, whatever. And he kind of looked at us, and like I had a bloody nose just from the stress of it. Like he never connected or anything, but the other kid was like beaten up, and I'm just sitting there just crying and crying. He's like, "Wait, so
you won?
You won? You, the crying like 98-pound kid, you won?" I'm like, I don't remember. I think I did. Like, it was rough. It was rough.
That's pretty awesome.
I couldn't win a fight now. There's no way. But yeah.
So this wasn't in Toronto.
No. It was a smaller city called Barrie. I lived in a really tiny town called Coldwater. It was like 1,000 people, and we were the outsiders moving into town. It was like a farming community, and my parents did not enjoy being there, but my dad's work was there. He ran the telephone company. Yeah. Like, it was a small telephone company just for like that town and like surrounding towns. Yeah. I remember it was the kind of place where like a guy across the street, his phone was out. This cranky old man, he came across the street. My dad answered the door, and the guy was like, "My phone's out, Murray." And he's like, "Well, all right, okay, yeah, well, we'll take care of it in the morning. Like, there's nothing I can do right now. Take care of it now." And I remember watching this. The guy took a swing at my dad. Like, this old man punched my dad. And my dad was like, at the time, my dad was like training in karate. And he could have murdered this old man, but he was just like, just kind of pushed him out the door, closed the door. It was like, that was like life in a small town. Yeah, I found out later that my dad suffered from panic attacks and anxiety attacks. A lot of it was just kind of moving his family around and like, the breadwinner kind of stuff and, standard macho shit. And when Spider-Man got married, which was a big day for all of us, there was a signing in Toronto at the Silver Snail. And that was like an 1.5-hour drive for us. And my dad hated going to Toronto, like just hated it. Yeah. Big city, just like stress. White knuckle. Yeah. But he saw it was a big deal for me. And my little brother was excited to meet Spider-Man because Spider-Man was going to be there. But John Romita Sr. was the guy signing because he did the cover. And I knew just reading the comics that he was the art director of Marvel. And I'm like, this is my chance. I'm fucking 10, 11, whatever. I'm like, I'm going to get hired by Marvel. And, only in hindsight did I recognize like how stressful it was for my dad to drive us into Toronto for this thing. And it was like probably a 3-hour wait to actually get something signed by John Romita. And, he told me later, like, yeah, that was one of the hardest days. Like, he just remembers just like gripping, because he was worried he was going to have an attack. Like, it was just him alone.
Yeah, more worried about having the attack than the actual, getting the attack over with.
Yeah, but worrying about the attack could bring on the attack. So he's just like, he's white-knuckled in Toronto, and like me and my brother are just like all excited to do this. And he's just like, oh God, like I gotta keep it together or else, is it gonna be bad? But it was so, worth it for me. Like, that was insane. Yeah. Like, meeting John Romita, like, I remember getting up to him, and I put down the copy with Spider-Man and Mary Jane, the other one with like Peter Parker, Mary Jane. He did the 2 covers, and I got him to sign them, and I had drawings with me of my own characters. Yeah. And 8.5 by 11 paper, but to present them nicely, I stapled them to comic backing boards, which I felt was not quite lamination, but it's a good presentation. And I'm just like, I'm staring at him. He signs the comics. I'm really quiet. I just like put down these drawings in front of him. They're just terrible. One character is called Uni Squad, which is basically Firestorm, but with 5 guys in them.
That's awesome.
And a cool leather jacket. Yeah. And so it's just drawing him in a cool leather jacket, and he's got like one finger up, holding up like one of those like Looney Tunes style, like 1,000 pounds. Right, yeah. It was so bad. I remember I just put it in front of him. And he's like, "Hey, yeah, look at these." And he's like, "Yeah, you're okay." I'm like, "Oh, thank you." I'm just like sitting there, just staring at him, and he's just like, "Do you want me to sign them?" Or I'm like, "Yeah, please." And so John Romita signed it. It said, "John Romita, okay." And I took it back, like, oh my God. Like, he must have thought, like, what does this kid want from me? Like, yeah. But yeah, just the okay fueled me for probably 10 years.
Yeah, my dad did. He took me to meet Todd McFarlane.
Oh wow.
Like right when Spider-Man 1 was about to come out, I guess. Yeah. I don't really remember much about it other than I showed him my drawings. Yeah. And he told my dad, like, "Oh, your kid's gonna make it.
Wow.
And I think that must have
That's huge.
meant a lot to my dad.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know, because
he's also seeing probably all the hoopla around this guy.
yeah, this guy's got all this attention.
Yeah.
Everybody there is worshiping him. Basically, it seems like even if he doesn't have a lot of money, he probably has a lot of money.
Probably does. Yeah.
Yeah. And just my dad being a electrical contractor doesn't really know much about art.
Yeah.
He was always super supportive.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah.
But it must have been a load off to just be or maybe it was a curse. Fuck, now I gotta support this forever, But he did, either way.